So thank you for coming this evening. My name is Rhonda Heights. I am with the Family Care Enhancement Program at the Munroe-Meyer Institute, and we're going to be visiting today with the team from the Assistive Technology Partnership to learn more about the resources and programs that they have available. As I said before, I am part of the Family Care Enhancement Program at MMI, which basically we are a team of parent resource coordinators. And what that means is we help families navigate systems, programs, help them get connected to the resources that they need to get the services that they need for their children. All of us are also parents or caregivers or siblings of individuals with developmental or disabilities. So we've also kind of walked that walk as well. As you can see, we are a large team across the state and we are growing. We have several individuals, PRCs, that are located in Omaha, Lincoln, Kearney, I'm going to admit Norfolk, Scottsbluff, and I'm going to be in trouble because I probably forgot another location. But like I said, we have PRCs across the state that are here to help families. A few housekeeping items tonight. We are recording this session and it will be available in our video library at on MMI's webpage. You have this in the slides that were sent to you earlier, but this is also the link where you can go and find that information. It probably will be a couple of days before I have the video edited and it's up, but it will be available later, as well as the past sessions that we have hosted. We will be asking everyone to please mute their computer. Just helps with the flow and with questions. Any of those questions that you have, please go ahead and submit them to Jennifer Hansen, my colleague, in the chat. She should be one of two options, and she will go ahead and moderate the chat with the questions. And then finally, at the very end of our session this evening, we will have a poll. It's like 5 questions. If you could just give us some feedback as to whether or not you found this session helpful. If there's any suggestions that you may have, please, email myself or Jennifer. But we really want to know if these sessions that we're providing are hitting the mark. Couple of upcoming sessions that we have coming in the near future. We're going to be switching back to the transition topic for the rest of the fall. We're in October 21st. We will have a session regarding sexual health. On November 4th, supported decision making, which would be either in conjunction or as an alternative to guardianship. And on November 18th, managing funds and benefits. So be looking for those. Those are also the registration links for the upcoming sessions. So tonight, I'm really excited to have the team from ATP. They're going to be talking about the different programs and really giving a broad kind of overview of what all the different types of programs and how they can help families. We've got Tobias or May Faith, Angie Ransom. I believe Brooke was unable to attend, but then Brian, help me with the last name, Brian. I'm going to say Wachek. Okay, thank you, because I was going to do that not well. So thank you for that. Again, if you have any questions or suggestions for this or any future sessions, please email myself or Jennifer, and we will be happy to answer that or provide you any follow-up information following tonight's presentation. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Brian.
And let me go ahead and share the right screen, and I am going to turn things right over to Tobias.
Perfect. Well, good evening, everybody. So my name is Tobias Orr, and I am the director of the Assistive Technology Partnership, also known as ATP, because the Assistive Technology Partnership is a mouthful. If you want to go to the next slide, Brian. So our presenters, which were already introduced, so myself, Angie, Brian, May, and then I will be covering Brooke's sections. Any questions, put them in, send them to Jennifer, and we'll try to take a couple seconds between presenters to answer any questions as they come up. Otherwise, there'll be a Q&A at the end. So please put any questions you have in the chat and send them to Jennifer. Next slide, please, Brian. Okay, so ATP, we are within Nebraska VR, which is within the Department of Education. So we are a state agency. We are the state's assistive Technology Program. We were one of the first ones back in 1988. The Technology Related Assistance for Individuals with Disabilities Act was where the original funding came from. So in 1989, Nebraska VR applied for the grant, and Nebraska, along with 4 other states, were awarded funds to be the original state AT programs. Then the Assistive Technology Act of 2004 came along, and that's what really developed, or that's what really is the programs you're seeing today. So nowadays, every single state and territory has an AT program, but they all vary state to state. We have certain activities that the federal government requires of us with that funding, but as you'll see with the various presentations, Nebraska's AT program, ATP, we've developed partnerships with numerous agencies and developed quite a few different programs. Next slide, please, Brian. We offer services statewide, all ages, all disabilities. We have offices in Omaha, Lincoln, Columbus, Kearney, and Scottsbluff. Each program has its own criteria for eligibility. And so while as an agency, we serve all ages and all disabilities, there are certain limitations depending on the program. And you'll learn more about that further down this presentation. Next slide, please, Brian. So our federal funding comes from ACL. That is what makes us the AT Act. They divide it into 2 different types of activities, state level and state leadership. Where those names came from, I have no idea. But under state level, we have what's called state financing. And these are activities that help people obtain AT for free or at a reduced cost. So things like this would be a resource coordination that Angie's going to talk about. This is where we help people try to find funding for AT. We also do device reutilization, which will also be spoke more about later, but basically that is us taking donations of slightly used DME and assistive technology and getting it back in the hands of individuals that could use them at no charge. We also have a device loan program where we loan items out for 30-day trials. It could be for decision-making purposes, if you're comparing features of different items, or it could be for a short-term accommodation. If someone had an injury and they needed a temporary ramp for 3 or 4 weeks so they could get a manual wheelchair in and out of the house. And then we also do device demonstrations, which is part of that, helping people learn about different types of AT, comparing features between different items so that they can make an informed choice before actually purchasing something. And under state leadership, we have what's called training and technical assistance. That's pretty self-explanatory. We do provide trainings to various individuals and groups on the benefits of AT and different things around assistive technology. We do public awareness activities. Before COVID, we had booths at lots of conferences. Now we do more webinar type things and constant contacts, newsletters, things like that. And then just coordination and collaboration. And that's really what is the basis of our partnerships with DHHS, Department of Education, Nebraska VR, and various other entities. Next slide, please, Brian. So any questions, Jennifer, up to this point? I'm going to guess. All right. All right. So I'm going to turn this over to Angie Ransom. She's our resource specialist, and she's going to talk to you all about funding coordination.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Tobias. My name is Angie Ransom, and I am lucky to work at the ATP within resource coordination, funding coordination, assisting Nebraskans in finding resources. Next slide, please, Brian. So ATP funding coordination connects all Nebraskans. As Tobias said, we serve all ages, all disabilities with funding options for assistive technology. And when we talk about assistive technology, it can be small items like an app on a smartphone or device, all the way up to modifying homes, vehicles, work sites, you name it. So really within the funding coordination, it's every day is a different application that comes in, which is great because I get the opportunity to talk with the individuals, their families, and sometimes providers about what kind of technology would help make the home, work site, and everyday living independent and safe for the individual. So we'll talk a little bit more about how that works. Next slide, please. One of the main features with resource coordination is that we offer a service and device application. So if anyone's worked with ATP or if we've had the opportunity to assist you, this might have been something that was the starting point with our agency. The service and device application, oftentimes shortened to an S&D, is a multi-agency form. And it was created to identify agencies, programs, and funding options that could provide that possible funding, help that individual get that assistive technology that they're needing. One interesting and really nice part about the service and device application is that we collaborate with the applicant, first of all, to fill that out, find out what assistive technology they're needing, and then we can forward that service and device application with their permission to other agency partners and programs that we work with specifically that may have those resources. And I'm going to get more specific in here in the next few slides about what those agencies are. But going back to the collaboration, what's a really helpful piece for those who fill out the application is that we're able to gather the information, have it be secure, and so that some of the programs will not require them to repeat that application. So they've completed it, they put all their information in there. We understand the kind of assistive technology that they're needing, and we can forward that application. So I think sometimes when we're talking about collaborating with other programs, it can be overwhelming for individuals and families when a lot of programs are talking to them at once or sending applications. So the service and device application really has been helpful in having one starting point, one central location or point to get the information and then be able to forward it. So I find often that that's a really a weight off their shoulders and understanding that they filled it out and now we can use it for other purposes and agencies. The other thing that we do that's helpful with the Assistive Technology Partnership is that we provide a resource letter. So for every application that we get, they will then receive a resource letter, which is outlined specifically to the kind of resources that they're needing. So I will take time to talk with the consumer and family, as I mentioned, but then really focus on what possible resources are out there in the community. Maybe it's regarding their health impairment or diagnosis. It could be regarding the county that they live in and the state, maybe their age, and specifically the needs. So I take time with each service and device application to research and try to identify funding options, whether they're loan programs, grant programs that the family can take a look at, apply for, and hopefully possibly get some funding. You know, to be transparent with how funding sources are across the state and across the nation, sometimes those are a little bit trickier to find specific resources, but I feel that with every single application that comes in, we're providing that individual based off their application a starting point of resources and that we can continue to work together on. So every single individual, like I said, will get a resource letter once they've sent in a service and device application to ATP. Next slide. One of the main partners that we work with is Easter Seals Nebraska, and they offer an alternative financing solution. And one of those main things that I think we utilize this program for is that if someone, for example, has funding or is looking to modify a vehicle, they need an accessible vehicle to get themselves around, their family around, but purchasing a vehicle and finding traditional funding might be difficult. We will have them apply for an Easter Seals Nebraska loan. And listed out here are a couple of the programs that they have. One of them is an alternative finance loan. This is a traditional loan between $2,000 to $35,000, and it goes through First National Bank of Omaha. Right now, the interest rate on that is 3.25%. And so for some of those loans where individuals are needing to find funding to cover a larger item, that tends to be a really helpful part, and Easter Seals offers great credit counseling and financial counseling resources with an individual or a family when they apply. The second one listed there is a mini loan. So this is something that if there's assistive technology that's in a smaller amount that the person would like to apply for, anything from $100 to $19.99, they can request funding or a loan for this mini loan program. And that also can help build up their credit. They take a look at what the AT need is and they're able to provide them that loan. And the last one is a telework. So that would be any assistive technology device that is necessary for telework from home or a barrier to employment. And again, those loan amounts can be from $1,000 to $35,000. So Easter Seals Nebraska works with us. They will accept the service and device application. They contact the family. They talk with them about the need that they have. and then complete the rest of the financial information to see if they're eligible for a loan through Easter Seals. Next slide. Another program that we work very closely with and collaborate with is the United Cerebral Palsy of Nebraska. One of their features is that they have a client assistance grant. It provides limited grants for qualified individuals with disabilities. And one point with the UCP client assistance grant is that they have a pretty extensive area of eligibility. So it's not just having a specific diagnosis of CP. It would be if you meet the criteria, and they do have some information listed on their website. But this can assist with items such as adaptive equipment, removing barriers for the home. One thing that they do not provide this grant for is any computers, iPads, or equipment that way. So that is one thing that they don't take a look at. So we often will have to find other resources. But UCP of Nebraska incorporates our service and device application into their packet. So again, if someone comes to ATP originally and fills out the S&D, we can then send that over to the United Cerebral Palsy of Nebraska for a possible grant client assistance grant. They do only review those quarterly, so sometimes it can take a little bit of time before someone gets that approval of the $1,000 grant, but we certainly send that over and work with the staff at UCP very closely. Next slide. One of the things Tobias mentioned with our state level programs that we have is that we have a website called AT for All, which provides equipment for either demonstrations or short-term loans. And I would encourage everyone to take some time when you have it to look at our AT for All website. And I know Brian will talk more in depth about the education side of it. But really with AT for All, if you are wanting to see if there's a piece of equipment that you can try for a short-term loan, look at it for a demonstration, or see if it's available at no charge, you can go on to AT for All and search categories. It's similar to Amazon or whatever you may think of when you're going onto sites to search and browse. You can type in some equipment, it will pull up where it's at, it will pull up the kind of equipment that we have and tell you a little bit about that assistive technology. So AT for All is one of the main parts of our agency in terms of getting equipment out there statewide and letting people have a chance to see what's going to work for them. I've heard the saying a lot of times since I started working at ATP is, with this website, it's a try it before you buy it, meaning assistive technology isn't a one fit for all. So if someone has a chance to trial a piece of equipment, whether it's at home, work, school, in the community, and we have that opportunity to let them try it at no charge, we're certainly going to do that so that they can find the right kind of assistive technology for them. Next slide. And so the last bit that I'll talk about is our reuse network. And the reuse network connects equipment statewide to individuals. Some examples are wheelchairs, durable medical equipment, walkers, crutches, bath chairs, and items. Tobias mentioned briefly when he introduced the program is that we can accept donated items. And we've definitely seen an increase in that in the last couple of years. And with COVID, whether it was people not needing the equipment any longer, being home, having a chance to go through that garage, clean up the items that they have, or just had an opportunity to bring those to us. When they come in, we make sure that they are, we check them for safety, we sanitize them, make sure that they're a proper fit to get them back out in the community. But I think that this is going to continue to be a huge part of ATP and with our network statewide, trying to connect individuals to the equipment that they cannot get maybe through insurance or just at a DME store due to the cost. And so the reuse network has certainly been something that kind of crosses over into all of our programs. Next slide. I'm happy to turn it over to Brian, who will be able to tell you all about our education program.
Did we have any questions for Angie before we went into the education program?
Nope, no questions yet.
All right. Well, my name is Brian Wojcik, and I am the education program supervisor and the assistive technology partnership. The education partnership or the education program is funded by the Office of Special Education Programs at the Nebraska Department of Education. And we have a slightly different focus than some of the things that we've already talked about, but we also have areas that overlap with some of the areas that we talk about. So let me go ahead and start explaining a little bit about the education program. The education program starts with the philosophy that assistive technology services for children and students receiving special education services. So our partnership really focuses on what's happening in the schools, either through 0 to 3 Part C or Rule 52 services, or 3 through 21, meaning school age Part B or Rule 51 services. The philosophy here is that those services related to assistive technology for children and students receiving special ed services really starts with the people who are working with the children and students most directly. This means members of the IFSP team or the IEP team. This is a strong cornerstone of a lot of what we do in the education program, because our job is to provide support to those who are providing supports to students. So what are some of the things that we do in the education program? Well, we offer a lot of ways to help individuals, so teachers, therapists, administrators, paraeducators, service coordinators. We provide opportunities for them to learn about what is assistive technology, what types of assistive technology are available, how do we go through processes in order to make decisions about whether or not a student needs assistive technology, and if so, what assistive technology is needed by that child or student. We do that largely through a lot of professional learning. This year, we launched something called the ATP Education Program Academy, which is a whole series of different professional learning opportunities in terms of webinars, targeted trainings, communities of practice, online courses. We also have a program called the AT Cadre. We do all of this professional learning in order to help build the knowledge and skills of those who are working with students to learn about assistive technology and how to make decisions about assistive technology. One of the resources that I would really like to highlight, actually a couple of them, are our webinar series, as well as the ATIA Learning Center. These are things that are available to anyone within the state of Nebraska, which means they are available not only to individuals who are working in schools, but also families, service providers, anyone within Nebraska who would like to learn more about assistive technology and how assistive technology could be used to meet the needs of children and students with disabilities. Our webinars, if you go to our website, which I will highlight in just a bit, you can find all of our upcoming webinars, and those usually take place in the after school hours, though we do have some around lunchtime as well. And we have a variety of topics in those webinars that focus on assistive technology for different domain areas. So assistive technology for communication, executive functioning, reading, writing, math, seating and positioning, switch use, lots of different topics. We also have a series that focuses on quality indicators of assistive technology services. The ATIA Learning Center is another opportunity that is available to any Nebraskan who would like to learn more about assistive technology. And if you go to our website, there's an opportunity to sign up for this. This is free of charge. And this gives access to about 140 different online learning opportunities on a wide variety of different assistive technology topics. Many of these learning opportunities are eligible for things like ASHA CEUs, AOTA CEUs, ACVREP CEUs, and IASET CEUs. And those CEUs are provided in our partnership with the Assistive Technology Industry Association at no charge to Nebraskans. In addition to professional learning, we provide a variety of supports, and I will go a little bit more in depth on the ATP statewide education loan pool in just a little bit. But we do offer a loan pool. You notice atforall.com. We have an education side to it. This is a different site because it works under slightly different rules. The education.atforall.com is the ATP statewide education loan pool. And this loan pool is available for members of IFSP and IEP teams to borrow assistive technology to try with children and students and help make some decisions about what assistive technologies might be beneficial for a child to receive a free, appropriate public education under the programming in their IFSP or IEP. We also provide a lot of coaching and support to IFSP and IEP teams, and that's an important piece. Sometimes teams need a little additional help where they need someone to come in and help them go through some problem solving, or they need to learn a particular process or about particular tools that might be beneficial for the children they serve. That's our role, is to go ahead and support IFSP and IEP teams. We have a variety of online resources as well as email updates and resources that are available on our website as well. Again, our goal, and I can't emphasize this enough, our goal is supporting those who are supporting students receiving special education services. So our website, the general ATP website, is found at atp.nebraska.gov. But if you add a /education, that brings you to the education program portion of the website. And I'm going to go ahead and visit this real quick so you can see some of the things that are on there. So on the education program website, you'll see that there are a variety of opportunities. If you click on Learn About Assistive Technology, this is where all of those things that we talked about, the different webinars, upcoming webinars, archived webinars, as well as a variety of other learning opportunities are available. The ATIA Learning Center is also available there. And again, this is an opportunity for service providers, family members, and so forth to go ahead and access 140 different topics related to assistive technology at no charge and potentially receive CEUs if that is of interest. There is also opportunities to go ahead and try assistive technology. And this is where we get into our statewide loan pool, requesting support, which I'll talk about in just a second, and then just some general resources regarding the assistive technology education program. Kind of coming back, we can look at requesting support. When you go to request support, and again, support is for individuals who are supporting students receiving special education services. So we're looking at different coaching opportunities, training opportunities, tips and tricks, resources on different assistive technologies that are out there. There's a couple ways to go ahead and request that information. One is to go ahead and click on that request support and or contact us. And that'll lead you to a whole bunch of different options for different types of support. We also do go ahead and have a live support chat function that I like to point out. So if you have a quick question or are looking for information, this is a great way to just drop in on our website, click that, and go ahead and get some immediate feedback on an issue that you are looking at. I'd like to talk a little bit more about education.atforall.com. This is the statewide assistive technology partnership education program loan pool. And this is available for IEP and IFSP team members in order to make decisions about assistive technology for the children or students that they are serving. So we have a few thousand different devices that are available in this loan pool. And by going to education.atforall.com, you can, individuals can go ahead and search through there and borrow devices to then try with children and students receiving special education services. The main purpose of this, as I said, is to go ahead and try those assistive technology tools. And as Angie put it before, this is a try before you buy type of situation. It also gives a lot of opportunities to go ahead and narrow in and focus on the specific needs of the children and students in order to find those assistive technology matches that are going to help them be successful and receive that free appropriate public education. Another reason to go ahead and use education.atforall.com is sometimes there is assistive technology that has already been written into an IFSP or an IEP. And that assistive technology might get broken or might get lost. So we can provide a short-term loan while that assistive technology is being repaired or replaced. Individuals who can borrow from education.atforall.com include members of the IFSP or IEP team. These are school-based members. The way our funding works is that we are funded through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funds that are given to the state of Nebraska. The Office of Special Education provides those funds to us as a way for us to go ahead and run this program. The restrictions on that is that for individuals to borrow from education.atforall.com, they do need to be education or school-based members of the IFSP or IEP team. However, that does not prevent families and parents and caregivers from looking at education.atforall.com and bringing information back to their IFSP and IEP teams. So we do go ahead and encourage that as well. One resource that I'd like to go ahead and point out, and this was in collaboration with PTI Nebraska, and we have other collaborations that are on our roadmap right now, but this was one of our first collaborations, and this was an assistive technology parent support guide for Part C, or 0 to 3 services. And this particular resource, and I'm going to jump over so that we can look at it in a little bit easier. This particular resource looks at the definition of assistive technology, the purpose, and why AT is important. It also gives a lot of different examples of assistive technology across a lot of different domain areas. And so I encourage you to take a look at some of these examples. This is a great way for parents to start getting an idea of what assistive technology is potentially out there in order to help my child. The second page of this is one that I think is really, really useful. Assistive technology during the 0 to 3 services can come up at sort of 3 different times. One time would be the child doesn't have assistive technology, and we're starting to think about that. Another time would be my child has assistive technology. Now, what are some of the things I need to think about with that assistive technology? And the third part is transitioning from Part C, or those 0 to 3 services, to those 3 through 21 services, the school age services. And so we talk a little bit about what happens during each of these stages and potential questions that parents may ask of their IFSP or IEP team, depending on the stage. And so this is a good way of kind of getting into the mindset of how do I think about assistive technology for my child, and what are the types of, where is my child at in the process of assistive technology? We're first thinking about it, my child already has it, and now I'm thinking about transitioning from 0 to 3 to school age services. What are the questions at each of those stages that I may ask of my IFSP or IEP team? So I encourage you to check out this resource. And we've gotten some really good feedback on it. We're always interested in additional feedback and suggestions. So I do encourage you to give that. If you're looking for that resource, again, we're up on the education website. And if you go to the side, you're going to see Part C 0 to 3 resources. If you click on there, it's going to bring you to this page and you can go ahead and access that. So one area to go ahead and take a look at. I'll go ahead and pause at this time to find out if there's any questions that people have about the education program or assistive technology in those 0 to 3 or 3 through 21 school-based services.
Yes, we have had a couple of questions come in. The first
Awesome.
one is, where can I find the S&D?
Angie, I'm going to let you take that one. And I can drive for you.
Is she muted?
Yes.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much. The S&D can be found a couple places on our website. So where Brian has our website up along the top bar under services, you're going to go down to the second one there, funding. And this is going to open up the page that tells you a little bit about how the S&D is received. And so I'm really glad that you brought up this point, because I did I skipped over that when I was talking about the service device application. So on this page on our website, you'll see there's a couple different ways that you can fill out the service device application. One of them being electronic. So if you click on that website or that email there, the atp.funding@nebraska.gov, it will send an email to me that comes in, and I'm able then to send you a link for an electronic copy of the service and device application. You can fill it out, you can sign it electronically, and it comes right back into us. Also, you can still request it to be sent to you by mail. So we can either print off a copy and send it to you, or you can complete it online by clicking on that under mail. You can click on the service and device application. It's a fillable form that you're able to fill out and then print it off and sign it. And so you can send it in either way. And we've recently redone this application, which has been helpful for, I think, all individuals who are filling it out. It gives us an opportunity for you to put more information in about the kind of assistive technology that you're requesting, as well as other programs and agencies you're working with. So it's a 4-page application, with the front page being a little bit about what to expect on there. So it's not too cumbersome of an application. And again, we gather the information to be able to connect with resources across the state. If you can, Brian, go back to our main page for ATP. Thank you. So the other place that you can find it is if you scroll down a little bit here, Brian. And I apologize, we might have taken it off there.
Keep going down, Angie.
There we go. Thank you. Same thing. So if you click on that to learn more about funding, you can click on that and it will take you back to that main page that talks about the resources. So a couple of ways to find the application, but you can also, again, always email myself, and I think our emails will be on the end of this presentation, or you can click on the atp.funding and you can get an electronic copy sent to you.
Okay, next question. My child is struggling, but I don't know what would be helpful as far as AT for them or what is available. How do I start that process to find out what can help them?
That is a great question, and one of the things that's really nice about working with the Assistive Technology Partnership is that there are multiple programs. We've only touched on a couple of the programs so far. So depending on where your child is struggling, there may be one or more programs that you can go ahead and work with. If I'm talking about it from a school perspective, the primary responsibility of assistive technology, determining assistive technology needs, happens to fall on the shoulders of the school. So if your child is receiving services through an IFSP or an IEP, it's those teams that have the primary responsibility for determining assistive technology needs of the child in relation to receiving that free appropriate public education. So the first thing that I would do is come back to your team and talk with them and say, I think that there are assistive technology needs, or I would like to know if there are assistive technology needs. How do we go about doing that? Different teams and different schools will have slightly different procedures for how to go ahead and do that, but it should be part of that it can be part of that evaluation after eligibility is determined. There may be some as they're identifying educational need, they can incorporate an assistive technology evaluation there. They may go ahead and choose to do an assistive technology evaluation in order to focus on very specific questions, or they may be starting to try some different types of assistive technologies in the course of providing services to your child under their IFSP or IEP. So there's a couple different ways that come in there. The other thing is that I would highly recommend, if you're looking for how do you educate yourself about assistive technology, take a look at our webinars. Take a look at our webinar archive, so either our upcoming webinars or our webinar archive, or go and look at that ATIA Learning Center link, because there's a lot of different topics there about assistive technology. If you're still looking for information, go ahead and send us an email, and we'd be happy to go ahead and point you in some additional directions for assistive technologies that may be most relevant for your child as well.
Okay, a couple more questions here. My child's IEP team is suggesting a communication device for my child who's nonverbal. I'm not sure how we would go about paying for this, but the school is saying Medicaid will pay for it. How do we start this process?
Can I take that, Brian? Just a little bit, if it's a Medicaid question?
Absolutely, and I'm going to backtrack though on the school's responsibility here.
So as far as starting the process for Medicaid, they should go online to accessnebraska.gov and complete the Medicaid application there, because that is their gateway to trying to get Medicaid eligibility if they don't already have it. They can also call the 800 number that's on the website, and they can speak to somebody and have an application completed over the phone with them, or have a paper one sent out, and they can send the English or Spanish version depending on the family's needs. They can also request to do that application with an interpreter if they are not primarily English speakers or Spanish speakers. So they have a few different options available. I can tell you augmentative communication devices are listed under the durable medical equipment portion of the Medicaid regulations as an allowable. However, I do believe there has to be a speech or an occupational evaluation that lists the needs of the child so the correct augmentative device can be recommended and prescribed. So it will go along with a prescription, I will tell you that, and along with a therapist's evaluation. So there are a couple of pieces there to get equipment paid for through a Medicaid plan, but it all starts by applying for Medicaid.
And one of the things to understand within the scope of special education services is that when an IEP team determines that assistive technology is necessary for a child to receive a free appropriate public education, then the responsibility to provide the assistive technology falls on the school district. So if an IEP team, I'm going to say that one more time, if an IEP team determines that assistive technology is necessary for a child to receive a free appropriate public education, then it is written into the IEP, and the responsibility for providing that assistive technology rests on the shoulders of the district. Now, there are pros and cons with this. If assistive technology is purchased by the district, it is owned by the district, which means that if the child moves from a district to another district, that assistive technology does not necessarily follow the child. Now, that doesn't mean that the receiving district would not, if the child still needs assistive technology, then the receiving district would evaluate that need. And if the IEP team at the new district says the assistive technology is needed, then the new district would then have the responsibility for providing that assistive technology. That doesn't help with things like when the child graduates. Can they take the assistive technology with them? That gets into other pieces, but that also gets into areas of transition planning. So there are pros and cons with a school going ahead and purchasing assistive technology for a child. Parents cannot be required to use personal medical insurance, personal funds, or Medicaid funding in order to fund assistive technology that has been determined necessary by an IEP team. They may choose, they may opt into doing so, but it is they cannot be required to do so. I'm talking about some legal pieces, so it's always important to go ahead and work with your school, and the schools will be working with their lawyers and different things as well. So, but generally speaking, the way the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is written is that assistive technology needs to be provided at no cost to the child and family.
Okay, another question. I've heard that it can be more difficult to get new or replaced AT once your child is an adult. If that is true, is there any kind of evaluation that can be done before a child becomes an adult to make sure they have everything they need?
Can you repeat that question one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. I have heard that it can be more difficult to get new or replaced assistive technology once your child is an adult. If this is true, is there any kind of evaluation that can be done before my child becomes an adult to make sure they have everything they need?
This will cross over into a couple different areas, not only the education program, but also looking at some of the programs that Tobias is going to be talking about shortly, as well as some of the things that May will be talking about. When we're talking about preparing for post-school outcomes, that's an area that we would refer to as transition. And so within that transition planning, it is important that there is intentional planning for assistive technology, if assistive technology is needed for moving towards those post-school goals and outcomes. And so that will come into play in terms of funding coordination. It will come into play in terms of working with multiple agencies. And so receiving agencies that may help to support your child upon graduation as they become an adult, things like HHS or vocational rehab. It's important that they're involved in those discussions to the maximum extent that they can be, so that there is a plan for how that assistive technology and those assistive technology needs are met upon graduation. Assistive technology, it's less contingent upon evaluation as much as making sure that the assistive technology is needed and that those conversations are happening across the multiple agencies in order to have that plan in place for after graduation. Tobias and May will likely talk a little bit more about this.
I'm just going to jump in real quick, Brian. And I think part of it is the earlier the child works with AT in the school setting, by the time graduation comes around, ideally, we should already know that this item works, this item doesn't. And so we don't want to wait till the end of high school to hurry up and try to find, what supports would be helpful for the student. So the earlier the student receives AT services, the better the outcome is going to be.
Okay, are hearing devices or visually impaired devices a part of AT?
So are we talking about things like hearing aids and eyeglasses, or are we talking about things like Braille note takers and cochlear implants? Because those are different levels.
That is a very good question. I don't know. It's not on there. Let's see. Not eyeglasses, but hearing devices, things like that.
So there's and there are so yes and no. So as we are talking about and different devices that may be used. So say, for example, a child has a hearing loss and is in a classroom. They may have personal hearing aids. Those personal hearing aids, most of the time, are not considered assistive technology, and they may be recognized within the confines of the IEP or the IFSP, but not necessarily obligated by the school district in order to provide those. But say they have personal hearing aids, but they need an FM system or an infrared system to go ahead and hear the teacher's voice or hear different students in the classroom. Or maybe they're using a sound field amplification system in order to raise the overall loudness of the speaker so that it is easier to detect. Those types of technologies definitely can be considered assistive technology. As we move into Braille devices or magnification devices, we're talking about technologies for individuals with vision loss. Braille devices, magnification devices, tactile devices, all of those, if they are needed in order for the child to have that free appropriate public education, making reasonable progress on their IEP goals and objectives. If it's required for that, they can be considered assistive technology for the child.
Okay, we just had a little clarification on that question. She wrote things like canes for visually impaired. Would that be AT?
Potentially. Again, this comes down to the IEP team determining that the technology is necessary for the child to receive that free appropriate public education. And so it may be assistive technology, but it really does need to have the IEP team come to that determination.
That's it for questions for now.
All right. So we'll go ahead and turn it over. You've already heard from May, who answered awesomely up on the Medicaid piece, and we'll turn that over to May to talk about our HHS partnership.
You gotta switch screens, Brian.
Yeah, we still have the web page.
Sorry.
Up. No, it's good. So I'm May Faith. I am ATP's HHS program supervisor, meaning I work with all programs HHS. So that is developmental disabilities and the aged and disabled waiver program. Next slide, please, Brian. So the purpose of home and community-based waivers, because that is actually the general term for what they are, it's the federal term for what they are, is to allow individuals the choice between community living and residing in a nursing facility or other institutional setting. Nebraska offers 4 Medicaid waivers, and yes, actually developmental disabilities are considered Medicaid waivers because that is the federal application it goes on. So there are 2 for developmental disabilities, and then there is a traumatic brain injury waiver that serves individuals that are 18 and up, and right now it is limited to assisted living because there are very few providers for that service in Nebraska, and not for lack of trying to find new ones, but nobody was biting or terribly interested in doing that particular endeavor except for QLI in Omaha. And then there's the aged and disabled waiver. I would tell you that the programs that I work primarily with are the 2 developmental disability waivers and the aged and disabled waiver. So 3 out of 4 of all of those waivers, and the ones that I primarily work with, offer assistive technology, home modifications, and or vehicle modifications, depending on the person's needs. Next slide, please, Brian. So the thing about waivers is that each waiver sets out limitations for what they're going to be providing. So it's also part of the regulations that are out there for each program. So they limit the allowable service, but they also, some of the waivers have dollar limitations in addition to time limitations. And it's very complex and very technical, but I've gotten used to all of that. So I have answers if you have questions for that. All waivers advise that if an item can be purchased or obtained through the Medicaid insurance managed care plan, then that is the first and primary way to seek it out. So there are things that are considered durable medical equipment, like I mentioned before, and augmentative communication would be one of those things that you would go ahead and consider to be durable medical. There are regulations for what you have to do to get that, and that is where it has to be sought primarily. So a waiver won't pay for those things initially. It could be petitioned to be asked for, but you have to have tried to get it through your health plan. Next slide, please, Brian. So in order to access services available through a Medicaid waiver, first an individual needs to be Medicaid eligible. Then they need to meet an institutional level of care. So that would be nursing facility level of care or an intermediate care facility for persons that experience developmental disabilities. And that's as assessed by HHS. And that's actually a more recent change. It used to be contracted partners they had, but in July, they switched that to HHS staff are the only people doing those assessments, or well, an initial assessment, I should say. They also have to have a current person-centered plan that both the services coordinator and the consumer and their family have agreed upon. So that would identify areas of need as well as areas of strength, and then areas that they need to continue to receive support in, but also what things that they would like to try to continue to do independently. So it is really about that person. And in ideal situations, a person-centered plan and the planning process is led by the individual. So if we are a much younger person who has parents that have to speak for them, then that is something that parents would supplement. However, when you get up to those transition ages, so you get to 16, 17, 18, it's nice to see that individuals can go ahead and guide that meeting to talk about their needs. Next slide, please. So when someone requests services, they need to request that service from their services coordinator if they're on a waiver. That is where everything starts for me, because the services coordinator is the only person that can then turn around and send ATP a referral and request that waiver services, waiver funding be used for it. Developmental disabilities waivers have an internal process that means that they have all of their requests reviewed by their central office staff before a referral can be submitted to ATP. And part of their process includes them making sure that it meets their own regulatory criteria. So, and they're a little bit different in that they also have a separate choice of providers. So it may just be you want an assessment and maybe you don't want to talk to ATP, and that's okay. We're okay with that. Next slide, please. So this last slide, and I love this slide. This is my favorite slide. This is an OB feeding robot. I know everybody laughs because I'm a big kid about it, but it's one of the coolest things ever. So when I talked about meeting an institutional level of care, part of that is assessing your physical capacity. And there are people out there that cannot do certain tasks for themselves and things that I take for granted daily. And one of them is just being able to get food from my plate into my mouth. And this robot will actually make it so somebody can do that for themselves. It comes with a switch. You can actually, well, it's two switches, one to position the plates and the other to get that spoon into that little plate, that little tray, and to your mouth. And so that is actually a device that, well, my first couple of months in this position, we helped an adult receive one because she was home for a large portion of the day with no caregiver assistance. And one of the things that she's not able to do is feed herself. She is absent of hands and cannot lift what's remaining of her arms above her shoulders. So she couldn't feed herself, have a snack, have lunch without the caregiver there, and they were definitely not there during lunch. So we worked with her to obtain a feeding robot. And so she became independent in that particular activity, as long as that tray is filled up before that provider leaves for the morning. I'm pretty sure that's the end of my slides. So are there questions?
Yes, we did have a couple of questions here. So the first one was the level of assessment change. Was that for the adults or for children?
So children actually experienced a change, which actually wasn't much of a change, to be honest. So aged and disabled waiver has been a fixture for Nebraska since 1998. That was the first time they had a federal waiver application approved. And so they set in regulations and put it all out there, but they didn't clearly outline in nursing facility regulations, which is a different title and chapter of, Medicaid regulations. But it did say in the waiver regulations that children had to meet a nursing facility level of care, and they laid out what that looked like. I want to say 3 years ago in December, they updated the nursing facility regulations that are for general Medicaid and included a chapter for children's nursing facility level of care. So that, I believe, is 471 NAC 40, I believe. Don't quote me on that last number. I know it's one of the higher numbers. All the lower numbers are reserved for other things. Chapter 12 used to be nursing facility, but it is only adult nursing facility, not children's. I hope that helps with that, and I hope I answered the whole question.
Okay. And then the next one is, does the AT assistance count against the individual during their level of care reassessment? So if the individual becomes independent by using the AT, is that counted against them, that they're then independent during the level of care assessment?
I don't actually do those assessments. I don't know how they're using that information. I would tell you that historically speaking, they have notated that they are independent with the use of an assistive device. Similar to somebody with a walker or a cane, that they can independently transfer from one surface to another, or their mobility is there as long as they have this assistive device. So it's noted in there. Now, if they don't have it, let's say your robot breaks for whatever reason, like the spoon breaks or the arm stops functioning, then that would also impact you, and then it would instantaneously change your level of care. So I believe they have to notate that, and that also that they can't perform the task without that device.
Okay, and then the last question that I have so far, if you receive a piece of equipment through AT and it breaks after the warranty, does the individual, the family member, have to pay for it out of pocket, or is that covered through Medicaid?
So let's talk about that, because it's a unique question. So there are, I don't know how many of you have seen a Hoyer lift. There are motorized Hoyer lifts that do some of the lifting for you without having to do a whole lot of hand cranking. And then there are the manual ones. And Hoyer lifts are all completely a DME item. So it's nothing that a waiver would pay for. So then you would have to go back to your insurance plan and ask them to fix it. Now, if I frame it as a vehicle modification, the modification itself, the rest of the vehicle is, yours, you own it, that is your problem to fix. But the modification, if it breaks after the warranty period, they can request a repair under their waiver using their waiver funds. Now, I say this, but developmental disabilities has limitations. So if you spent $10,000 in year one, you have to wait 5 years to access that funding again. So you would then be responsible, if it breaks in year 3, to go ahead and pay for that repair out of pocket, because their requirement is 10,000 years over, or $10,000, not 10,000 years, that's a long wait, $10,000 every 5 years for one vehicle. And then separately, you can have $10,000 towards a home modification. Again, you got to wait 5 years if you need a second modification or if something breaks. So that is something I have actively spoken with developmental disabilities about. They're aware of it being a negative impact on individuals. And so I know it's on their radar. I don't know activities they're undergoing with trying to make that more user-friendly for individuals, but I know they're aware of it.
That's all I have for questions.
Okay, Brian, next slide. Thanks, Brian.
So this will be me again. So Brooke Harry is actually the program supervisor that oversees our ICANN Connect program. But since she couldn't make it, you all have to listen to me for a few more minutes. So ICANN Connect, also known as the National Deaf Blind Equipment Distribution Program, ATP is Nebraska's ICANN Connect provider. ICANN Connect is funded through the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, and it's a neat program. It's very niche. It helps individuals that are legally deaf and blind that meet certain income requirements acquire telecommunications equipment. So any equipment that can help them access telecommunications. But they have to be legally deaf and legally blind. And so we don't do a lot of these projects each year, maybe 10 to 20, but if somebody does qualify for, there's not a ton of limitations on it. And so we're able to purchase, something like a Braille Edge, some of the higher tech equipment that's a little bit costly. Right here, you can see the application for Nebraska can be found at www.icannconnect.org. Let's go to the next slide, Brian. Oh, and that's all we had for ICANN Connect. So really, it's just a recap, is for individuals that are legally deaf and blind. I want to say the income cap is 400% of federal poverty, but don't quote me on that one. You can go to our website and find all that information as well. But yeah, they have to have a telecommunications need and legally deaf and blind. So the next program that Brooke oversees is our partnership between Nebraska VR, Nebraska Voc Rehab, and ATP. Let's go to the next slide, Brian. So what we do for Nebraska VR is we help consumers that they're working with AT solutions that either help them obtain or maintain a job, or for schooling or training that is going to lead to a job. So what happens is Nebraska VR is working with an individual. They see the possible AT need is there. They send us a referral. We send one of our technology specialists out. We assess the situation, functional limitations, what the job goal is, the job tasks, and this could be prior to even getting a job. It could be that they have a job goal of whatever it may be. We can come in at any point during the process. We then make recommendations based on the disability, and we always have to look for the most cost-effective solution that will help that individual either obtain, maintain, or get a job. We send that recommendation back to VR. They approve it. Then we order the equipment. We help with training and setup to make sure the individual can use whatever the device may be, and to help them be successful at work. And this could be anything from home mods to vehicle mods. We do ergonomic assessments. This could be communication devices, cognitive aids, hearing and vision devices, ADL equipment, mobility devices, or just basic worksite AT. Let's go next slide, Brian. Pre-employment transition services, or PREETS as it's known, is a VR program where they're working with students ages 14 now to graduation. And VR provides different services, but what we do, we can't necessarily use PREETS funding to purchase AT, but we do provide info-only consultations. So we'll get a referral from VR. We'll come to the high school. We'll meet with the student. We'll find them equipment to demo or trial. This is where Angie could come in too. If equipment is identified that would work and there's not funding, we would then guide them to have them do the S&D and get Angie involved so that some resource coordination can happen. This also ties into the project search sites, which Nebraska VR has across the state, partnership between school district, VR, and a private business where students do a 9-month internship. We are all part of those teams, and so we're there for any AT needs that those students and the project search sites may need. Next slide, Brian. Oh, and this is success stories. Hold on. Okay, so handful of success stories, and a lot of these show the partnerships or the connections between ATP's different programs. And so one thing ATP really, I guess we pride ourselves on, is we want to be that one-stop shop. If somebody has an AT need, the goal is that we have a program out there somewhere that can help them at this point. That's another reason we help people across the lifespan. Because individuals that have AT needs while they're in the school system will most likely have AT needs as an adult in the workforce, community living, and so a lot of times individuals can benefit from various programs at the same time or various programs throughout their life. So this first success story, let's see, Carolyn has MS. She's worked on a college campus for years and needed assistance with getting around campus and transportation as her diagnosis continued to progress. Her doctor recommended a power wheelchair as she was no longer able to balance on her scooter. Insurance covered most of the cost of the wheelchair. However, ATP was able to help fund the power elevating seat feature. Carolyn completed a service and device application through ATP, was found eligible for EFG, which is a private grant we get for Omaha residents. Carolyn purchased a van, and Nebraska VR and EFG together co-funded and were able to help fund the vehicle mods she needed to drive independently from her new power wheelchair in order to maintain her job. Next slide, please, Brian. Okay, this is Dominic. Dominic worked in Nebraska VR to go to school for many years. After graduation, he obtained a job as a counselor, and VR referred him to us for an ergonomic assessment of his work site. He uses a power wheelchair, so he is not able to get his legs under the desk in the office. An electric adjustable height desk was recommended, so he could easily move the desk up and down to fit his legs under properly. He also required door grips to be able to open the door to his office independently, as well as wireless headset to take calls due to his limited range of motion to reach the phone, and a reacher to be able to pick up items he may drop. His employer provided a laptop with Dragon Naturally Speaking software, so he was able to dictate his notes and emails easily for work. And this is just a good example. We also work with the employer because a lot of times employers, especially bigger companies, they will provide lots of accommodations and they will help fund equipment. And so when ATP comes in, we're making recommendations, either us or most likely the VR counselor would also speak with the employer to see what they can provide. And then we look at VR funding then to provide the rest of the needs. Next slide, please, Brian. Okay. When working with a student through Nebraska VR who is going to school to become a CNA, ATP met with her to discuss ideas to help her be successful in school. She was diagnosed with a learning disability in reading and writing, and also had trouble with focusing and being easily distracted as a result of ADHD. Options were discussed and equipment was tried and loaned to her through the AT for All program. In the end, Nebraska VR was able to purchase a reading pen for her to help her with her reading textbooks and other documents for her classes. She also purchased Audio Note herself, which is an app that she could use on her phone to record lectures and help her with studying and taking notes to ensure she was getting all the important information and not missing anything. And next slide, please, Brian. And last one. Christian was a student of the Papillion Young Adult Program who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Insurance paid for a power wheelchair for Christian, but he had to keep it at school as his home is able to, hold on, this is not right. His home is unable to accommodate the larger chair. At home, he uses a manual wheelchair to get back and forth to school. His manual wheelchair is very old, poor condition, and was a safety concern as it no longer had anti-tippers or other important features. Insurance would not cover the cost of a manual wheelchair since they had already funded the power chair. The family completed a service and device application through ATP, and they were eligible for EFG funds in Omaha. Christian was able to get a new manual wheelchair that fit him and was safe for him to use daily. A grabber was also found through the reuse program and given to Christian for free to help him pick up things that he may drop. And this is just another good example of the resource coordination that Angie does, also coordinating with the reuse program. Oftentimes there's free equipment out there, that needs a home. So if we can find somebody that can use it, that is almost always going to be the first option. Next slide, please, Brian. And that is the end of the presentation. So I guess we'll just open it up for questions for me or for any of the coordinators or any of the programs.
All right, I've got one here. How do you go about donating for the reuse program?
First, I say just give us a call. We'll put you in touch with the equipment manager in your area. There are certain items that we cannot take. So like bathroom type items that are not sanitary or not in good working order. Really anything that's not in good working order, we probably cannot take. Larger items such as hospital beds, we don't have the storage for that. Some of our reuse partners do. So that's why it's always best, just give us a call. What we can also do for a large item, let's say you had a hospital bed you wanted to get rid of, we could help you list it on AT for All and try to help get you in contact with someone else that can use it without it ever actually coming onto our property. As far as power chairs go, there's always a need for power chairs, but the first thing is they have to work. So a lot of times, sadly, people will hold on to a power chair from a lost loved one. It'll sit in the garage for 3 years. And then when they're finally ready to get rid of it, the batteries are dead. We don't have the funding at this time to buy new batteries. And so at this time, we cannot take a power chair that does not actually operate. Also on the note of power chairs, the super specialized ones, we have a hard time getting rid of. You know, your basic power chair with standard seating, lots of people can use that. But for those power chairs that are super modified or super built just for a certain individual, we're going to have a hard time getting rid of those. So we might not be able to take it. So just give us a call and we're happy to talk about whatever it is you have to donate. And hopefully it's something we can use, and we'll set up a time to have you come by the office and drop it off. And we also give tax donation letters for tax for write-off on your tax or income taxes.
That's all I have for questions.
Awesome. Any other programs? It doesn't have to be just anything I talked about. All right, I guess I'll turn it back to my staff. Any last comments or things you all want to say?
I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with people this evening, and I hope we've been able to introduce some new information and answer questions. And I know that any of us are more than happy to go ahead and continuing to answer questions either this evening or if you contact us. One way to go ahead and stay in contact with us is by following us on Facebook, Twitter, or subscribing to our YouTube channel. We have a variety of resources that go out. Any of our upcoming webinars or newsletters and so forth, you can find a lot of that on these channels. I'm pasting that in. Rhonda, would you be willing to go ahead and copy and paste that out to everybody? So if you would like to go ahead and follow us, this information is up on our website on how to follow us. But I've also, hopefully it'll come out in the chat as well.
And I would just like to,
go ahead, Angie, please go ahead.
Sorry, Tobias. For funding coordination, any resource coordination, certainly if there's a question about, is there a possibility to identify funding for an object or assistive technology, certainly give us a call. I'm happy to talk with anyone, families, you know, individuals, just to try to identify, see if the service and device application would be a good starting point, or there might be another resource that I can just directly, you know, have a warm handoff and connect you to that program. So certainly encourage anyone to give us a call at any time, specifically for any resources. I'm happy to answer the questions.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure presenting. And like everybody said, feel free to reach out to any of us or just the general website. If we can't answer your question, we'll find somebody that can.
Well, we really appreciate you all being here this evening to share this information. I think really answered a lot of questions and kind of gave guidance as to where to start. And if you're looking at those types of services for a family member or a child, kind of how to get that process started and how to navigate some of the assistance and get that ball rolling. I did want to address, Brian, I'm having some trouble getting that copied and pasted in the chat. So what I will do is I will just go ahead and email that out to everybody when we wrap up this evening. So look for that so that way you have that contact information as well. So now, yeah, you are absolutely welcome. I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead. If anyone has additional questions, suggestions for myself or Jennifer for upcoming presentations, please let us know. I'm also going to go ahead and post and launch our poll. So if you wouldn't mind taking just a couple of minutes to provide us with some feedback, to let us know if this was helpful, if there's other places where we could improve. Basically just kind of let us know how we did tonight and if there's anything else that we can help you with. But again, everyone, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next session.